The forest looked peaceful under the bright afternoon sun, but sometimes the biggest moments of our lives begin in places that seem completely ordinary. I thought our weekend camping trip would become another happy memory with my best friend, something we would laugh about years later. I had no idea that one quiet night in a shared sleeping bag would change the way I understood friendship, courage, and love forever. Before we begin this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Wisdom Story House if you believe that kindness and second chances can truly change a person's life. At 24, I believed I had everything figured out. I had a stable job, a small apartment that I was proud of, and one friendship that had survived every season of life. My best friend was Marin, a cheerful wildlife photographer whose adventurous spirit always managed to pull me away from my careful routines. While I spent my weekends organizing shelves or reading books at home, she was climbing mountains, chasing waterfalls, or driving hundreds of miles just to photograph rare birds. Somehow, despite being complete opposites, we had remained inseparable since middle school. When Marin suggested a weekend camping trip to celebrate the beginning of summer, I almost refused. Camping had never been my idea of fun. I preferred warm beds, hot showers, and reliable phone signals. She simply smiled and promised that this trip would remind me how beautiful simple moments could be. She had a way of convincing people without forcing them, and before I realized it, I found myself packing hiking boots, jackets, and a backpack that felt much heavier than necessary. The drive to Pine Hollow National Forest was filled with laughter. Bright sunlight poured through the windshield as endless green hills stretched across the horizon. We sang along to old songs from our teenage years, teased each other about embarrassing school memories, and stopped at tiny roadside cafes where everyone seemed to know each other. It felt like time had folded backward, returning us to a simpler version of ourselves before careers, responsibilities, and endless worries complicated life. The campground rested beside a crystal-clear lake surrounded by towering pine trees. Warm daylight filtered gently through the branches, painting golden patterns across the forest floor. Families cooked lunch over campfires while children chased butterflies through open fields. Everything felt calm, welcoming, and wonderfully alive. Setting up our campsite became its own comedy. I struggled with the tent poles while Marin laughed so hard that she nearly dropped the instructions into the dirt. Eventually we managed to build something that resembled a proper tent, although neither of us trusted it completely. As the afternoon passed, we explored nearby trails, skipped stones across the lake, and watched deer quietly graze in distant meadows. Every photograph Marin captured reflected her ability to find beauty where most people saw nothing special. As evening approached, soft orange sunlight covered the forest. We cooked simple food over the campfire and watched smoke drift lazily into the sky. Without city lights, everything around us seemed brighter. The stars slowly appeared one by one while the forest settled into peaceful silence. It was impossible not to feel small beneath such an enormous sky. The weather forecast had predicted mild temperatures, but nature had different plans. Shortly after sunset, an unexpected cold wind swept through the campsite. Temperatures dropped rapidly, and despite wearing extra layers, we both began shivering. When we checked our equipment, we discovered that one of our sleeping bags had become soaked after a water bottle leaked inside the backpack during the hike. Neither of us wanted to admit how uncomfortable the situation had become. Buying another sleeping bag was impossible because the nearest town was over an hour away, and driving back at night through unfamiliar mountain roads didn't seem wise. We laughed about our bad luck, pretending it wasn't a problem, but the cold continued growing stronger. Finally, we decided to share the only dry sleeping bag. It wasn't ideal, and we joked awkwardly about how ridiculous it would look, but friendship has a way of making unusual situations feel perfectly normal. Inside the tent, we squeezed into the oversized sleeping bag, careful not to bump into each other more than necessary. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees while insects created a gentle nighttime rhythm that echoed across the quiet forest. For a long time neither of us spoke. I stared toward the roof of the tent, listening to distant owls and rustling leaves. My thoughts wandered through old memories of birthdays, graduations, heartbreaks, and countless moments Marin had quietly stood beside me whenever life became difficult. I realized that no matter what happened, she had always shown up. Hours seemed to pass before I heard her soft voice break the silence. She turned slightly toward me and quietly asked if I was awake. The question itself wasn't unusual, but something in her voice felt different. It carried a hesitation I had never heard before, as though she had been gathering courage for a very long time. I answered softly, and the silence returned for another few seconds. The forest outside seemed to stop breathing. She admitted that she had been carrying something inside her heart for years. Life had become exhausting because she constantly pretended everything was fine while quietly battling loneliness. Everyone admired her adventurous lifestyle, but very few people knew how isolated she often felt after returning home from every trip. Behind every smiling photograph was someone afraid that one day she would lose the people she loved most. Her words caught me completely off guard. Marin had always been the confident one, the fearless explorer who inspired everyone around her. I had never imagined she struggled with fears that looked so similar to my own. As the conversation continued, I realized something even more painful. While I believed she was endlessly surrounded by happiness, she had quietly believed I no longer needed her because my career appeared successful and my life seemed stable. We had spent years protecting each other from imaginary burdens instead of simply being honest. The cold night disappeared as we talked. We shared memories we had never spoken aloud before. We admitted regrets, fears, disappointments, and dreams we had hidden beneath busy schedules. There were moments when neither of us knew what to say because emotions filled every silent space between us. The next morning arrived with brilliant golden sunlight spilling through the trees. Birds welcomed the new day with cheerful songs while gentle mist floated above the lake. Everything looked exactly as it had the day before, yet somehow the world felt completely different. As we hiked along a scenic trail overlooking the valley, I noticed details I had ignored before. Tiny wildflowers pushed through rocky soil. Sunlight sparkled across morning dew. A family of ducks crossed the calm lake together. The beauty wasn't new. My ability to notice it was. Marin smiled more freely than I had seen in years. It wasn't the energetic smile she showed strangers for photographs. It was quieter, softer, and more genuine. For the first time, I realized that sometimes the greatest adventure isn't climbing mountains or exploring distant places. Sometimes it's allowing another person to see the parts of your heart you've spent years hiding. Our friendship didn't magically become perfect after that camping trip. Life continued bringing challenges, stressful jobs, unexpected disappointments, and difficult seasons. But we made one simple promise. No matter how busy life became, we would never again assume the other person was doing fine without asking. We would choose honesty over silence and understanding over pride. Months later, when I looked through the photographs from that weekend, I noticed something unexpected. None of the pictures captured our late-night conversation inside the tent. There were beautiful landscapes, glowing sunsets, smiling faces, and peaceful lakes, but the most important moment existed only in our memories. Somehow that made it even more precious. Real friendship isn't measured by how many years you've known someone or how many photos you've taken together. It's measured by the moments when two people choose honesty instead of fear, compassion instead of judgment, and presence instead of distance. Sometimes all it takes is one unexpected conversation to remind us that the people we love may be carrying invisible battles every single day. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to Wisdom Story House so more people can discover stories that remind us how powerful kindness and friendship truly are. Special request, comment below, true friendship begins with honest hearts. As we packed our campsite beneath the warm daylight and drove home through the winding mountain roads, neither of us said much. We didn't need to. The silence between us no longer felt empty. It felt safe. Sometimes the greatest gift life offers isn't a perfect adventure or an unforgettable destination. Sometimes it's simply one person who quietly asks if you're awake, and stays long enough to hear the truth.